What is going on, fellow game developers? My name is Muddy Wolf, and in today's video we're going to be getting started with our first game in Godot. Godot is pretty awesome. I've been learning it for the past couple of weeks since the Unity news, and we will be basically making the game you see on screen here. I will run you through how to get set up, and here we go. So you can see we have a little cube boy. Now this asset is one of Kenny's. I will link it down below, all of the assets, and as you can see, you collect some things and you complete the game. You can play again and just keep changing, doing what you want here, and it's super easy to get started. So let's just close this and let's actually head over to where you can download Godot. Now I'll be using Godot 4.1. I have the C#.net version. However, you don't need it for this tutorial. I'm actually using nothing to do with the C#. You can just follow along by using the default GD script built into the Godot engine. I actually recommend that if you're not interested or going to be using the C# at all. So I'll be using GD script for this video because it's faster, and by faster I mean it's just faster to compile. It works really well. The engine is integrated, so it's a nice break from having to jump between software to actually make a game. So here we are, download this, and that's how you'll get started. Now I just want to say the assets we're going to be using are in here. We're only going to be using this and one of these, so this is probably overkill, but I wanted some starting assets. So once you just download this, and that's up to you, or you can click continue without donating. It is free and that will download it for you as well, and that's the assets. So once you have that, we can actually move this, get out of the way, and yeah, once you've downloaded Godot, you can just open up Godot, and I'll open up the project manager for you. So once you've opened up the project manager, you will see here any projects you've previously created. If you haven't, which I expect you haven't for this tutorial, you'll want to then head over to new project and create a new project. Now you can select where you want this to go, so I'm going to look for my projects folder, my game development folder. I'm just going to select this folder. I'm then going to name this my first game, and just hit create folder. You're then able to select a renderer. Now Forward Plus gives you a desktop powerful 3D rendering system, but you probably don't need that if you're making a mobile game, or you can't use that if you're making a mobile game because it only supports desktop. You could select mobile, which supports desktop and mobile platforms. It has less advanced 3D graphics, but it is much more compatible, and then you have the compatibility, which gives you a bunch more compatibility, as it says. I'm going to be using the Forward Plus because I'm not making a game for mobile. I'm making a game, well, just to demo it, but also for desktop. So let's just hit create and edit. Now I just want to mention before I explain the interface of Godot is that I'm going to be splitting this tutorial into two parts. You're going to have the main game level, like the actual level, and then we're going to add in UI later on, and I'll show you how to actually integrate some user interface with score and everything, and how to replay your game, and that will come second. But first we're going to get started with just a character that can jump around the level. Basic, really simple stuff, and that's it. Now, first thing we're going to do is you're going to notice we are in some 3D space here in Godot. What we want to do is head over to 2D because it's going to be a 2D game, and you're going to notice there's a node system on the left. Now, to Godot use a node system, which is basically how everything works. You add in a node has functionality, or it has visuals, it has something to do with the scene, it can be a container. Nodes are how everything works. You've got some base nodes, such as just the node, a 2D node, a 3D node, and then you've also got like other nodes like a character controller and stuff like that, and I'll explain as many as I can in this, but the first thing we want to do is start off with a 2D scene. Now I'm going to rename this to the main game, and what I'm going to do is save this as maingame.tscn. Now tscn is the extension for a scene inside of the game, but anything you create, such an asset, or like a pre-configured scene, is all made in a scene. So it's a little confusing, but I'll try and explain it as best I can. So let's create a main scene in here, and there we go. We've now got our main scene. So anything we add in here will be able to be used inside here. So this is going to act as our main container for our game, but we want to create a level first. So we're going to click this up here to create a new scene. We're then going to select for example another 2D scene, and I'm just going to rename this to our level. Now you can save this into the same directory here and save it, and you can see it's down here. Now if we go back to our main game, we can actually drag in our level, and that is now part of our scene. So any changes we make to level will be reflected here inside of this node. Now I just want to quickly mention, you can also configure your layout here. You can actually go up to editor layout and select the default, or well, standard is one I've created, as you can see here, but you can also go back to the default. Now if you want to create a new layout, all you have to do is go on these three dots on the right of anything to move them around. So let's say we want the scene to be over here or over there. You can move these around. We can move this whole column or sidebar over to the right side here. So you can see that's now moved over there. We could pull this whole thing out here and adjust things how you want. Just change things around. You can move these over to different zones just by dragging and dropping them. And it's really easy to extend or move and change. Then you can hit save layout and save a new layout. My favorite layout is the one I created, which is the standard, which is like this. So this is how I'll be using and showing the video, but you can just move things around. The tabs will still be the same. The functionality will still be the same. It's just what your preference is. Now inside of our level, we want to create some new nodes. One of the first nodes we want to create is a static body 2D. Now you can see here I've just opened up this plus here. You can also press Control A and it will open up this, or right click in here to click add a node, and it will add it where you actually click. So let's just add a node up here. Click search for static body, and you can see this is a part of the node. So everything will be nested under a node because this is the base class for all scene objects, as you can see down here. Then you've got different types of nodes, like a node 2D, a node 3D if you're making 3D, and static body. A static body is a physics body which you're able to move or not move, and what we want to do is a static body for our ground or our platforms, because this is an item you cannot move. So let's just add this here. And by cannot move, I mean you can move it via scripts and external forces, but I mean you can also make it so it doesn't move. So in the static body, you're going to see we have this warning. Now this just tells you that you need a collision shape to actually for it to be collided with. So the first thing we want to do is add a new child node of the static node, and we're going to search for a collision shape, and you can see we have a collision polygon 2D or a collision shape 2D. Now we're actually going to use a polygon because this allows us to draw a custom shape for our objects. You can see here we have the collision polygon, and up here we have three controls. You have the add a polygon or point, edit a point, or erase a point. Now the first thing we're going to want to do is actually create a point, and we can just click around and draw points like that. But first things first, I'm going to turn on the grid so we can snap to the actual grid, and I'm actually going to configure the snapping to be, let's say, 32 by 32 by 32. Click OK, and that should make the grid, as you can see, a bit larger. So let's actually create our new point, and you'll see this will snap to the points because we have the grid snapping turned on. And let's just create a 2-high platform here like this, and there you go. You can see we have our actual polygon collider there. Now in the actual game, if you was to run this game, you're going to see it's asking us to actually create a main scene. So this will be the scene that is run first. So what we want to do is hit select and select our main game scene and click open. Now we'll set it as the main game scene, and you can see here we can't actually see our platform, which should be right up here. That's because it's not, this is just a this red bit is just official for the actual collider. We actually need to draw the polygon in here. So we can just create a new child, and we're going to call this a polygon 2D. Now this is a visual node, and all we can do is we can actually go to our polygon On the right here, you'll see we have the inspector, which allows us to see basically changing things like its position, its visibility, and a lot of others. I'll explain these as we go along. But the one we need for the collision polygon is the polygon here. You can see there's the packed vector 2D. Now, if we click this, you'll see it has some points of where these points are, some information. What we want to do is right click this and click copy value. Now in our polygon, we can go down to data, and where you see the polygon, we can actually right click and paste the value, and you can see it creates the actual shape. Now let's rename this to ground, and let's actually move the ground down. So we're going to go into our transform here, and we can actually adjust the position by just clicking and dragging on here or entering a value. Let's just say 500. You see it's going to move it. Let's actually select the move tool and drag it to snap it to the bottom of the screen. I'm going to pull it here, which if we press play now, you'll see it should be at the bottom screen. You see it doesn't fill the whole screen. So let's make this a little taller. So we're actually going to select number 3, and we'll just go drag it down a few. Let's just drag it down to about 4 there, and then select the right node and do the same to level out. Then what we can do is we can either go in here and edit these manually, or we can copy our polygon again and paste it. But because it's pretty simple shape, we're just going to drag it down here. Now this may seem a bit crude actually writing all this, but you can drop in a texture to this or assets and actually have them be so you don't actually have to draw out your shape. You can just drop in any texture you have and then draw the polygon around it, or use a primitive shape using the standard. If we type in collision here, you'll see we have a collision shape, which is just a bunch of primitive shapes that you can use, like a square, circle, rectangle, and stuff like that. Now if we hit play, we should see this is now out of the screen. Now you can see the window view, the actual screen, the camera view is this blue line that goes round the screen here. Now I'll teach you in a future video how you can actually get this to move and follow a player, but for now we're just gonna leave it as static because we don't actually need the level scene to move. So now we have our ground. What we want to do is we want to create a new platform scene essentially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new scene from a 2D node, and we're going to change this. So if you actually create a 2D node, it's going to create a plain node here. What we could have done is, if I click node query, you could have used other node and actually selected the node you want. But since we accidentally just clicked create a 2D node, if you make a mistake, you can actually come in and change the type, and we can swap this to a static body 2D. Now we can rename this to platform because this is going to be an actual platform we use. And you can see here, once again, it's asking for a collision shape. So we're going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to press Control A, and I'm going to get a polygon collider. So there's the actual, so you can actually do this in reverse and copy the data from here over to the collision. But polygon here, and then we can select create. Now I'm just going to go across a few here. Let's say this, and just make it quite a small platform. And then we can add a new child of the collision polygon, go into data, right click, copy the polygon, and then paste it here. And there you go, you can see our snap point there. Now you can see the red is over the actual polygon. To make the actual platform appear in front of the polygon, we can just drag this below in the hierarchy, and you'll see this now appears in front of the collision debug screen. Now you can see this is all the platform needs, and the reason we're actually creating a scene for our platform is so we can reuse it in our level by just duplicating it. So what we want to do is save, call it platform.scene, and save that to our game. Now if we can close this platform, and back in our level we can just drag in new platforms to our scene. So let's just do one here, Control D to duplicate, and move another one over here. Now I could duplicate that again and just bring one up here. And there you go, you see we've now got a reusable platform, and if we make any changes to our platform, you can actually click this to open the scene for it. If we make any changes to this, let's say we just move this point down, save, and come back, you'll see they all update. Now we don't actually want that, so let's just save that back as how it was before. And this is our level actually set up. Now the next thing we want to do is actually create our controllable character. So let's actually create a new scene this time, and this is going to be an other node, which we are going to call a character body 2D. Now this is essentially a kinematic body for our player. It's something we can move with by script, but isn't really moved by other forces unless something's applied to it. So what we could do is just hit create, and this will create our body here. We can rename this to player, and this will be our player node. You can see the next thing we want is, it says again, we need a collision. Now we're going to use a primitive shape for this. So let's add a node and let's call this a collision shape 2D. And now you can see here, it's going to give you another warning saying you need to actually set the shape for it. So on the right here, you can see collision shape has the shape. Now we can select this and actually select a different shape. Now you can do a bunch of different ones here, but the one we want is essentially a rectangle. Now you can see here the rectangle is there, but it's not really applying to the size of our character. So let's actually get in our character. Now I've got Kenny's assets downloaded here, and all we're going to do is go into PNG, Retina, and we can just drag in this Retina folder just straight into our scene here. So if we drag and drop, you're going to see it's going to import them, and we have all the assets here. Now if we want to, we can just drag our character here and drop it. So we can just drop this into our scene just like this, and there you go. We now have our player. So you can see it, but it's quite big in our scene. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go to our transform, which is a part of the node 2D, and we are just going to set scale to half the size. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the collision shape in front of our square here so we can actually see the shape of it. Now if we select this, we can actually stretch it out the actual shape to match our player. Now you can see that that's a bit big, but that will work nonetheless. So I'm actually going to set the X on this to be about 32. So you can see there it's roughly matching our player. It's slightly short, but you can tweak this if you wanted to make it 34 or 38, and there you go. That would cover it more, but I like just going a bit slimmer. That will allow it for some margin of error room there, and there you go. So if you want to edit the shape of the thing, you can do it directly in here. Now I'm going to actually name I'm going to bring this back below here, and I'm going to rename our character thing here to GFX. This is just so it's easier to mention in scripts, but also it will just work like this. So we see we have GFX here, and what we can do is now create a script for our player to move. But first let's save our scene. So I'm going to save this in here as player scene. And there you go. Now back in our level, let's actually drop in our player. Let's just drag him in over here, and we can just move him from here. So let's just go to transform and move him down. There we go. So now he's sat on the bottom there. And there you go, he's now in our scene. So going back to our player, what we want to do is we want to attach a script to this to control how he moves and how he behaves in our scene. To do that, we're just going to go up here to attach a new script to the node, or you can right click and click attach script. Now this is actually going to come with a template. Normally they don't, but because this is a type of character body, you can see it comes in with the basic movement script here. Now you can select the other two, but we are going to select the basic movement, and I'm going to show you how this works. So let's just hit create, and you'll see there's now a script attached here. So if you select this, it will open it up in the in tab, or the in Godot editor here. You can see from script, we can go back to our scene by clicking 2D, but for now we're going to go in here. Now you can see here we have a speed, a jump velocity, the gravity, which we're actually getting from the project settings. Now if you want to tweak this, you can go up to project settings, and just search for gravity and select 2D, and you can actually see the gravity there. Now the gravity vector tells you which way the gravity is being applied. So if you set this to -1, you would be going up, and if you set this to 1, you'll be going down. Now in here you'll see there's this physics process here. Now this is run every frame of our game, and the delta is the time between frames, so we can actually apply delta time to our velocity here. If you can see, this adds the gravity. So if we're not on the floor, which is actually a built-in function to the character body, which checks if we're touching the floor. If we are on the floor, then it will, or if we're not on the floor, we will apply gravity and delta. Now handle jump, this says if we press our UI accept, which is a part of the mapping, which I'll show you how to edit later on for the UI maps, and we're on the floor, then we're going to jump in the air. You can see here we have direction, which is our left and right, so it's going to say UI left and UI right, which we will also tweak later on. And you can see if direction, we're adding a velocity, otherwise we're just going to move towards 0. And then move and slide actually applies our velocity to our character body. So let's just save this and let's just hit play and see what happens. So you can see if I use the arrow keys, we can move, I can jump, but everything feels a bit floaty. My character doesn't feel the way it wants, but you can see we now have a basic controller in here. But let's go tweak this. So let's press F8, will close that, by the way, and if you press F5 it will launch the game. So you can see we can run project, we can run the current scene by pressing F6, and if we press F8 that will stop the scene. And I believe F7, yeah, is to pause the scene. So UI accept is actually just spacebar, by the way, and let me just show you how you can modify this, because currently we have to press our arrow keys to use the left and right. A and D do not currently work. So in our project zones, we have this input map, but you can see there's nothing here. However, if we click show built-in actions, you'll see we have all of them there. So you can see the UI accept is actually the enter key, the KP enter, which I think is your small keyboard, or sorry, your numpad enter, and then we have space. We also have our UI left and our UI right. Now this is only the left key and the right key, but we also want to add in A for left and D for right. So to do that, we can just hit this add button and just listening for input, I press A, you can see it says A or physical A, click OK, and you can see that adds A to our input map. We can then do the same for our right, and do the same there. Now you could also delete these if you didn't want these, or create a whole new action map. For example, if you wanted spacebar to delete spacebar from here and make sure spacebar has a jump map, you could do that by just going in here, calling it jump and hitting add, and then you can actually add in the space key here. So if we just press spacebar, you can see it's there and we have the space physical. But since we already have this UI accept and we're already using it, I'm actually just going to delete this for now, but this is an option if you wanted to do a custom map yourself. Let's close this. So now we should be able to press A and D to go left and right. Now at the top here, you can see we have these consts, and this is fine, but I want to switch this out to be variables we can edit in our inspector node. So you can see here, in our inspector node, we don't actually have anything extra. So to add something, we can use a keyword called export, and then say far speed is equal to, and I'm going to set this by default to 400 because I want our character to be a little faster. Now I'm going to delete the current const here, and I'm going to trade the speed for the speed velocity. And I'm also going to create a jump velocity, so I'm going to say at export far jump velocity, and I'm going to set this to minus 650. The reason we're using minus is because minus is upwards, so if we're going up, yeah, we'll want to go minus, and then we can just remove the jump velocity here to go up. And you'll see on the right here, we can actually now tweak these settings, and you'll see here if we just hit enter on that, you'll see it says we can reset because it's not the same as the script, but this would be the value which is used when we hit run. But I just want to set it to 400 for now. That works for me, and there we go. Now another feature we can do, which I want to add to this, is double jump. So I'm going to add another variable called jump count and set that equal to 2. I'm then going to have our gravity multiplier. So currently our player feels like he's quite floaty. I want to make it so he feels like he falls down to the ground a lot faster, more realistic rather than floating in the air for a little bit. And I'm also going to set this to 2 as well, so it doubles our gravity. And finally, we want to have just a private variable called current jumps, and that's going to be equal to 0. So this is going to keep count of how many times we've jumped off the ground. Now in our physics process, we're going to essentially move all of this into their own functions, because currently you've got the gravity, the jump, and the movement all in one function. This is fine, but I feel like we should split out for readability. So let's start off by applying gravity. So at the bottom here, let's create a function called apply gravity, and all we're going to do, we're going to pass in delta here because we're going to need to get the frame delta. And then in here, we just want to say if we're not is on floor. Now, if you want to know, there's a built-in function to the character body 2D. Now, if you want to actually learn about the character body 2D class, you can actually click search help, search for the character body. You can do this for any node, double click it, and this is going to actually tell you all about it. And you can see there's a bunch of different properties, but we also have methods. And if you look down here, there's an is on floor only. Now, if we click this, it tells you what it does. It returns true if the body collided with the floor or the last call of move and slide, otherwise returns false. And that's all that does. Now we can actually go back to our script by clicking it here, and that just tells you all of it. And you can search the docs all over from inside of Godot just straight away, which is really useful. So if you have any questions on anything, just search help, search for the node you're looking at, and then just find out about the function. So on our apply gravity down here, I'm going to just go down, and I'm just going to say our velocity dot y is plus equal to gravity times by our delta. So you can see here, all we're doing is telling our gravity, if we're not on the floor, add some gravity to our player and slowly bring him back down to the floor. Well, slowly or fastly, depending on how you actually want to use it. Now, what we want to do here is actually use our gravity multiplier as well by timesing this by gravity multiplier here. And this means anything we add here will multiply our gravity. Now, if we want this default, we set it to 1. Otherwise, we can add in the extra gravity here. So what we could do now is go back into our physics. We can remove our gravity section and just call apply gravity, pass in the delta value, and that will now do the same. So if we hit play, you'll probably notice we fall down a lot quicker. We're no longer floaty because our gravity is modified. Now we can modify this in game. Let's set this to 5. Go back to our game, and you can see we jump a lot lower, but we can also move a lot higher. Now I'm just going to reset that back to default and stop the game from running. So the next thing we want to handle is our actual jumping mechanism. So you see we have the handle jump, but let's go down here and create a new function called handle jump. By the way, you can also full screen this by clicking that in case you want to work with it in full screen as well while you're programming. Anyway, back to the handle jump function, and what we're going to do is we're going to first check if we are is on floor. We're going to set our current jumps equal to 0. So all this doing is saying if we're on the floor, set our current jumps to 0. Now this is inline. It's the same as doing it 1 underneath here. Doing it inline is also a way if you've just got one thing you want to change. It just helps. It makes it easier to read in one line. After that, we want to check if our input dot is action just pressed, and we're going to search for one of our actions. Now we're going to search for our UI accept, which is our jump action. And then once we've got our jump action, we're going to say if we are is on floor, or, so we're going to say or our current jumps is less than our jump count. So you can see we have our jump count, and we're allowing our character to jump twice. So we can just check here if we are on the floor. If we're not on the floor, we can actually basically jump. If we're in the air, so if this isn't true, we can check if we still have jumps left. And if we do, we can then jump. Now in here, we want to set our velocity dot y equal to our jump velocity. We can then set our current jumps plus equal to 1. So that will just increase our jump count every time we jump when we're not on the ground. And then we can replace our jumping mechanics here and just say jump, or sorry, handle jump just like that, and that should handle our jumping mechanics. So let's just once again try this out. So I can jump, and I can jump twice. You can see I can actually now double jump if I'm off the ground. So that's that handle. Now the final one is our movement as well, but we actually want to also flip our graphics here to be facing a different way depending on the direction we're going. So before we do that, let's just go in here, let's copy this out, delete this, and let's create a handle movement script, and that should just be like this. Now let's actually create the function for that. So function handle movement, and in here let's just paste in what we already have. Hit save, and that should be all good. So all of this is good. However, we just want to add in the ability to flip our characters which way he's facing. So if he's going left, then we want him to face left. Otherwise, we want him to face right. So to do that, we can come under our direction here, and we can use a really nice syntax. You can see here, $, and then the name or the path of our object we want to, or our node we want to edit. And you can see here by typing GFX, I can actually do slash and get some nested stuff. So if we had a collision object in here, you could type in something like this, but we just want our graphics, which is this node here. This only works for children of the object, so this will only work for objects inside the scene. And we can do dot flip H, which is flip horizontal. We can say if we're only going to flip it if our direction is less than 0, because that means it's going to change us back to left. Otherwise, by default, it's going to be right. We can hit save, we can hit play, and now we should be able to move. So if we go left, you can see our character now face left, and if we go right, he faces right. One last thing, guys, so that is our movement and our platforms now complete. But if you full screen this game, you're going to see it's kind of weird and the camera zooms out rather than scaling up with your game. Now to fix that, let's just close this. Let's go to our project and project settings, delete this, and you can see there's a bunch of different settings you might want to play with. On the run scene, you know we set the main scene before. If you want to change the scene that runs bomb start, you can actually select it by going here and changing it as well. But what we want to do is come to window, go down to our stretch mode and change it to canvas items, and make sure to just now try this out. And it should stretch our screen out and scale with the aspect ratio, which is really nice. And there you go. You can see we've got our character movement and all that done in this first lesson. In the next one, we are just going to add in the final parts of our game with the what you saw at the beginning of this. Our actual UI, the ability to restart, and a score with collectibles you can get in the game as well. So if you're excited for that, don't forget to leave a thumbs up so I know that you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.